Hello everyone, happy Saturday. This is one of my favorite Saturdays because this is the starting of a new batch for BESA program, Become a Solution Architect. And I'm humbled and honored to be here to present to you today. I hope everyone is enjoying and everyone is excited about the new batch. We will be focusing on lots of stuff and I'll quickly introduce you to the program. And our intention is to ensure that you get the best return on the time you are going to spend on this particular program. So let's get started and we will be talking about lots and lots of interesting stuff. Just a icebreaker question, and to check that everyone is able to respond into the chat, I would ask you which city you are joining from and what is your favorite landmark in your city. Like if I talk about I'm joining from London and there are a lot of favorite landmarks, I would say my favorite landmark is Westminster from the outside the view. But I want to know from you all, like what are your city's favorite landmark, and probably it could be something we could leverage to talk about and then discuss further. So I'm seeing a lot of answers here. The chat is there, so go ahead and talk about anything which you want here and ask question. Puducherry, oh, that's a nice place. I was in Bangalore for a long time and I used to travel there a lot. That Orville is a nice place. Chennai, Bangalore, San Francisco. I was in San Francisco last month, and Dubai is obviously a nice place. Las Vegas, oh, you're talking about lots and lots of stuff. So thank you, everyone. I hope everyone is enjoying CN Tower. Okay, Toronto, California, Santa Cruz Beach. That's a nice one, Nandana. And I'll talk about more stuff and keep these questions coming and the chat coming so that we know that we are with a lively audience. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about introduction to the team, that who is there to help you out in today's session. So there are a lot of background work is required to launch these batches, all the uh, planning and then advertising and then curating the content. So let me add people here who are helping us in this particular program. So a lot of familiar faces here, I guess. Then you have here Parna with me, then you have Prasad, and then you have Kapil also with me. There would be more people joining in, but we will be discussing about their details and how they are helping us in some time. But I hope that everyone would enjoy the best of this particular session. I'll ask team members to again come onto stage when the time comes for them, but let me quickly start in the interest of time so that we could go ahead and then discuss more things. So this time we have a new website. Probably most of you have seen it and seen the previous website also. So I want to walk you through a website so that you know what options are available and what you can do to get the most out of. Kavya, if you are there on camera, let me know. I can add you. Kavya has joined us for being a volunteer here. So let me add her here also. And she's joining from US. Hello, Kavya. And Kavya and Kapil and obviously all of us would be helping you in the chat. So keep asking questions. So talking about the new website which we have. A question to everyone: have you seen the new website? Have you at least accessed this or not? Or are you still accessing the website we had into GitHub page? A quick confirmation. If you have seen our new website, let me know if you have seen our new website. Looking previously what we had more programmer friendly type of a website, but now this one is what we have, and you can clearly see a lot of stuff here. I want to quickly walk you through the some of the stuffs which you can be helpful for you. So we have some information here, like we have around 180,000 YouTube views so far. Thank you everyone for that. We have 13,000 people in our LinkedIn group, including this batch people, and then we have 11,000 subscribers on YouTube. So thank you everyone for that. We really appreciate the love and encouragement you have shown to all of us. Now, coming here, if you are new to the program and if you want to see what we have discussed into previous batches, you could go ahead and check the playlist here. These are multiple playlists we have created for every batch. Then additional resources, like we talk about some slides or some links or some reference documents, so you could find it there. Common question you should be able to find into FAQ. Rather than waiting for us to answer into a chat, you could go ahead to FAQ and find lots of information. And if you want to do some hands-on, we have a quiz section here where we have published two quizzes. One is Gen AI related, which I highly encourage everyone to do to see where they are in their Gen AI journey. And if you are a solution architect or planning to be solution architect, check this one. Also, on this page, you can find agenda for the program. So for this particular batch, we have two tracks, like as always, technical and behavioral. And if you click on these links, it would allow you to add a reminder on your calendar. So it would be much easier for you to get reminded when the time comes. So click on these add to calendar, and you would have a Google Calendar invite, which would be added to your Gmail calendar, and that would be much easier. So this is the agenda for all the 8 weeks. We would see we have a progressive agenda which start from very basics of Gen AI, and then it progresses into more complicated stuff. So hopefully everyone would be able to learn from it. And on the behavioral track, same place, you can click on behavioral track and you would know what we are going to discuss. So we focus currently on cracking solution architect interview at AWS in 2025. What it needs to be a solution architect at AWS. First of all, what the role is, so that you can say, okay, this aligns to me or not. Then we have more details which are coming from recruiter, that how they scout a candidate when they're looking for a specific profile. Then we talk about different interview processes. Then we talk about assessment and all. So it will be an end-to-end view of how your solution architect interview would be happening into AWS. So this is all in website. And also want to mention that we have shown people's references here, and thanks for that, sharing all the details. So you could check your photos on Hall of Fame if you shared, which is about all the participants who have passed certifications. Then similarly, we have references and recommendations, which is coming from us, your testimonial. So all this information should be there. And obviously, you can meet the team, you can see the volunteers who are helping into this page. So this is our new website. And if you have any suggestion that how we can improve this website, we would be all ears to look for that and hear to that. Now, talking about batch 07, this is 7th batch we are running. Its duration would be 8 weeks. We are starting today, 15th February, and we would be then ending it on 5th of March. Timing is 3 p.m. GMT, which will be 7 a.m. PST, and for people in India, it would be 8:30 p.m. We would be focusing and delivering a 90-minute session here, so it would allow you to focus on technical track 60 minutes and solution architect role track, which is 30 minutes on that. So we'll focus on both the things. And we have a suggested prerequisite, which is batch 06 playlist. If you are very new to Gen AI, probably you should go and check those videos which we have published into last batch, and this batch would build on top of that. Like, we'll try to do more hands-on this time rather than doing theoretical things. So this is what batch 07 is all about. A little bit more on the technical track. So technical track is being made from the publicly available AWS workshops. So all these workshops are available publicly. We will keep on sharing links for that. So all of this is available, and you can try that on your own. What you would need to try these workshops on your own would be a AWS account. So once you have an AWS account, you should be able to play around with this, and will help you in understanding what needs to be done to start with. And you need to be a little mindful of the cost, because you would be doing this in your own account, and that's why you'd better clean the resources once your work is done, so you do not get unnecessarily charged for it. And don't be afraid, even if you're spending $5, $10, $50 also, it is worth it, because you would be learning a lot. People think, oh, I have spent $1 on learning in AWS. Hey, it's nothing compared to the reward which you will be getting. So don't shy away. Don't be afraid of using AWS. Highly, highly recommended. Thanks, Kapil, that you should be doing the workshop. Don't forget to clean up the resources. So that would be technical track. And now I want to add Prasad to the screen so that he could explain us about the behavioral track and what we are going to see into behavioral track. Over to you, Prasad.
Hello, everyone. Can folks hear me? Oh, cool. Yeah. So yeah, for the behavioral track, we will be mainly focusing on the solutions architect. Ashish, would you mind moving on to the next screen?
Yep. Yeah, I think I made a mistake. I said 5th March. No, not 5th March. That should be 5th April. Sorry for that.
Yeah, 5th April. So yeah, for behavioral track, the idea is to help the audience understand what the role of a solution architect is at AWS and how you can achieve it. And it's not just for AWS, it is for any big tech company mostly, or any other companies where you would be having a role of a solutions architect. In this particular track, we will not be focusing on technical skills. We'll be focusing specifically on behavioral skills. And to help you with that, we will be inviting guest speakers. So it will be 8 guest speakers in 8 sessions. And each of the guest speaker would be a specialist in their domain and the seasoned Amazonians. And it will be more of a fireside chat. So any questions that you might have, let us know beforehand. We have published the agenda. Let us know in the Discord channel. And in the last 5-10 minutes, we will also open it up for the open Q&A. But yeah, as Ashish mentioned, it will be 1 hour of technical track and 30 minutes of behavioral track.
Yeah, and this is all coming because of the feedback we have received. Like previously, we had 2 hours batch, but obviously on a Saturday it was a little complicated for people to devote that much of time. So we shrink it, but we are still maintaining the same quality. All right, good. Now, a little bit more on the behavioral track. Prasad,
Yes.
what do you think somebody should be doing to get the most out of BESA program if they are
Yes.
participating?
So, see, this is the 7th batch we are running, and we can see the people who have actually benefited. See, BESA is a free program; anyone can join. But because if it is a free program, anyone can join, but also anyone can exit easily. But we have seen people who have got success, and there are people like, for example, Parna is here in the batch. She was part of one of the first BESA batch, and she was able to get into AWS. And we have so many other success stories like these who were the participants of BESA, and they were able to achieve their dream job. They were able to excel in their current company by getting a promotion, so on and so forth. But to get out of the best out of it is you need to participate fully in this batch specifically, because it's all about doing hands-on. So we will not be able to show end-to-end like in 1 hour of technical session. We will be giving you the kickstart, we will be giving you the resources required, but it is up to you in your own time to do all those workshops. And any questions you have, ask us. It's a very good community, and there are people in in BESA who have been with us for last 2-3 years, and they have been here because it adds a lot of value. So ask questions. We have a Discord channel. Join it if you haven't yet, and you'll be able to find the links of those in our website, the Discord channel, the LinkedIn group, and like connect with other people and collaborate, engage with the community. And the more sharing you would do and the more engaged you would be, the better it would be for you. And when we say share your learning, learn in public. It really helps. When you're doing some workshop, share it on LinkedIn, tag other people. It will help you actually to gain the required visibility. So once you have your technical skills, when other people will be also knowing that you have those skills, it will help you actually gain the credibility, build your own personal brand, and challenge yourself. Like, in each of the workshop that we would be sharing, they would be basic labs and advanced labs. So if you are able to complete the basic labs, then challenge yourself and do the advanced labs also. And the most important is staying consistent. So what we have seen previously is that the people who actually succeed is with us till all the 8 batches. So right now I see around 600 people plus joining us, 670 people. That's what it shows me, people listening to us. And what we have seen that, with every Saturday, people keep dropping, and those who leave till the end are the ones who actually get the most benefit. So stay consistent for all the 8 weeks, and I'm sure you will see the benefits. And yes, provide feedback. Feedback is really important, and I'll give you a very good example about feedback. The whole BESA program started because of the feedback from the community. When we and Ashish got together and we brainstormed to create, the BESA program. And one of the feedback from the BESA program was actually that there is a lot of technical material available. Like people can go on to Udemy course, and people can take YouTube channels and take some technical course, but people are still confused about how they can navigate their cloud career. And with that feedback, me and Ashish wrote this book, Cloud Career Journeys, which showcases the journey of 16 people from diverse backgrounds at different career stages, that how they were able to successfully navigate and become successful in their cloud career. So feel free to check out this book. It is available on Amazon as a paperback or on Gumroad as an ebook. So keep providing this feedback so that we can understand what the gap is, where the community is struggling, and accordingly we can actually help the community. And one of the feedback from the early readers of Cloud Career Journeys book was that, okay, this book is great. We were able to get motivated by reading the journeys of 16 people from different backgrounds. And when I say different backgrounds, think about Daniel. I'll give you an example. Like Daniel was a taxi driver. Like he was driving Uber, and during the COVID times, when the overall demand dropped, he started learning IT. Like not even cloud. He started learning IT, the basics. He did not even understand what an IP address is. He started from there, and now he works as a senior cloud engineer. So we have stories like that from different backgrounds, right, in different categories. And the feedback was, okay, we got motivated. What to do next? How to get started? And that's why we created something called Starter Kit. which is amalgamation or a combination of multiple resources, which includes 6 months access to 𝐒𝐴𝐥𝐿abs, 6 months access to plural sites, and other resources from different leading institutions. That is going to help you. Like in these 6 months, you can use these resources to upskill yourself technically. So yeah, we'll share the links for these, and feel free to have a look at these. And that's the reason we say that keep giving us feedback, because accordingly we'll be able to understand and help the community.
It makes sense. And completely, it's just like purely feedback driven community. The sessions we plan, the topics we include, the format we use is purely based on feedback. So feedback is really important. Good, bad, ugly, we don't mind unless it is a constructive feedback. We are happy to include that information.
Yeah,
And
even this batch that we should be including workshops was feedback from the previous batch. With previous batch, we covered the AI ML fundamentals, and people towards the end, 6th, 7th session, they said that we need more hands-on, and then we planned this whole, batch for hands-on workshops.
Makes sense. And I have to give an analogy here, Prasad. I can't stay without it. So everyone wants a fruit, right? So I want to eat a fruit, done. But for fruit, you have to plant a tree. So think like that, planting a tree and getting a fruit is a long-term process. It doesn't happen overnight. So if you think, hey, I'm going to attend this 8-week workshop, and then people would be lining up to get me a job as a solution architect, that is a misnomer. That is not going to happen. Obviously, just attending workshop is not something you need to look for. If you need fruits, you need to plant tree, you need to nurture it, you need to ensure it is consistently growing. So that would be required. So ensure that you follow these workshop and then take your learning to the next level. That's how you should be getting the most out of it. Thanks, Prasad. And can you talk a little bit more on the today's topic, behavioral track? Who are the speakers and what we are going to discuss today?
Yes. So for today, to kick off with the behavioral track, we have Jeff Barr coming. Jeff Barr is Vice President and Chief Evangelist of AWS, and he's the one who started the whole AWS News blog, the original AWS News blog writer. And joining us, Paul Duffy. He has worked in multiple roles at AWS, and both of them together, 12 years back, recorded a video, want to be a solution architect at AWS. And that became a viral video and has more than 100K views. And now this session today would be a reunion of them talking about the same, that how the role has evolved over the years, and what exactly the role means, and what skills you would need to become successful in that role.
Yeah, makes sense. Means it would be really like reliving the moments, and let's see how the 12 year has shaped the track of solution architect. Now, one more thing I want to clear, that even if you don't want to become a solution architect, maybe your forte is maybe programming, maybe it is analysis, maybe it is data engineering, but the skills we talk about here are going to help you in any type of role. Yes, there could be some SA specific component, but we try to keep it as general as possible so that anyone in IT profession or cloud profession wants to grow, they should be able to get most out of it. All right, good. So let me continue quickly, and we'll talk about the Bedrock technical track here. So I'm going to talk about a Bedrock workshop, which Parna is going to help us in going forward and into explaining all the detail. But this is a workshop which we have picked up for the starting point for this session. This is Amazon Bedrock workshop, publicly available workshop. We'll be sharing the link. That's not a problem, and we'll send a follow-up email every week after the session, so you would have all the resources into one single mail. Shouldn't be a problem at all on that. So talking a little bit more on the technical track, we are going to talk about a Bedrock workshop. So now the question comes, what is Amazon Bedrock? Or first of all, what is generative AI? So let me talk a little bit on the generative AI, and then we will move forward from there. So generative AI is not something which happened overnight. As I said, it is a fruit, but the tree was planted long back, and it initially started with artificial learning or artificial intelligence, which we started developing into machines. So machine were simulating decision-making capability or intelligence like human. That is what we call artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence was invented maybe 50 years back. There were supercomputers who could play chess, and then we should be able to move forward and have ML, which is ML is the ability of machine to learn without explicitly being programmed. So From AI, we moved towards ML because which was helping us to solve more complex problem rather than we teaching machine everything. Can machine run on its own? That is what ML is. Then in ML, we further enhance our capabilities using deep learning, or what we call DL. DL is based on human network or human mind, like how we learn. We have neurons and we have layers of neurons by which our decision making process happens. That's what happened in DL. So we tried to create artificial neural network in machine, and that created a deep learning capability. And that deep learning capability allowed us to generate new content. We don't want to restrict machine only to understand a pattern or understand a picture or analyze a video. Can it create a new video? Can it create a new content? Can it write a program for us? So that is where generative AI comes into picture. So AI could solve some set of problems, but when we have moved or progressed from there, now Gen AI is able to solve a lot and lot of problem, and it is expected that it would improve every person's productivity by at least 25% into day-to-day work. So that's obviously extra hours for me. I would be more than happy to learn about it and leverage it for my own things. So that is generative AI. Now, if I want to give an analogy, think of AI as a machine that can play chess based on the rule. We written a program, told it how to play chess, and machine is playing the chess. ML could be machine that learn to play chess from analyzing past chess games played by humans, and deep learning is machines who can learn about playing chess, about playing through against themselves. And then generative AI is a machine who could say, okay, this is the rule of the game, and go ahead and please create new game for me. So that is what a generative AI would look like. Now I'm just rushing this because we have covered this into our previous batch in detail. So please watch previous videos. This is the content from there where you have explained all these things into a detailed format. So you would learn a lot from there. Now you probably have heard about foundation model. So in initial days, all the models or the software we have created, they were doing a specific job. Like you train them on data, they can generate data. You train them on text, it can generate text. But generative AI is for foundational models focuses on unlabeled data, which we can push into a foundation model, and it can adapt it to different requirements. Like it could be text, summarization, info extraction, Q&A, chatbot. So it can perform various tasks from it. So rather than doing one single thing, it is able to perform lot many things for us. That is what we refer as foundation model. And when we train these foundation models on a large data set, let's say all the works of Shakespeare, maybe all the works of Milton or Edgar Allan Poe, now it can go ahead and write poetry for me. So same way, we train this model on the large data set available on internet, publicly, privately, and that has become LLM as we call it. And AWS allows you to leverage these capabilities through different mechanisms. So if you just want compute, then you can use AWS Trainium and Inferentia. If you want to build your own model, there is SageMaker available. And if you want to leverage foundation model as a service, that is where Amazon Bedrock comes into picture. So we'll be focusing on Amazon Bedrock as a service here through workshop. Now, Bedrock allows you to scale and build your generative AI in an easier fashion. It gives you access to all the common foundation models. It can give you ability to privately customize your model with your own private data. Then you can build agent to execute complex workflows using it. Then you should be able to extend power of generative AI through RAG, which we call retrieval augmented generation. And you should be able to do all of this while ensuring data security and compliances for your organization. So Bedrock is a place where you would be able to access most commonly used model coming from maybe a Meta, or maybe from Stability AI, or maybe from Mistral, or maybe from A121 Labs, AI21 Labs, and we can access all of these through Amazon Bedrock. A single interface, talk to any model, no problem at all. No need to verify and convert or create these models on your own. Then everything is API driven, whether you send that API request through directly a program like a API request directly, or you go ahead and use a playground, which is an interface from which you can leverage Bedrock, and we will be seeing this into our lab. And then you could also go ahead and write your own program who could leverage this AWS Bedrock as a service. So that's what Bedrock is on a high level. I would highly encourage you, if you are very new to Bedrock, to check our previous videos where we have explained and detailed everything into a nice manner, which you should be able to learn. So we will focus on workshop now, and let me ask Purna to help us today with the workshop. Let's see what is there and how we will be getting started. Purna, I'm adding you to stage, and can you please share your screen so that we could get started?
Sure, Ashish, just give me a minute.
Yeah, for people who are joining us for today, we had to do introduction, and that's why the technical part is little shrinked. But make sure we will make sure that you get more hands-on experience as we move forward. So over to you, Parna. Go ahead.
All right. Are you able to hear me clearly, Ashish?
Yeah, we can.
All good. And the screen, everybody can see it? I hope so. Or do you want me to zoom in a little bit? All good? Okay. All right. So I guess all of you have already got the workshop link. If you haven't got it yet, I would request one of the BESA team members to just go and post it. So this is the Bedrock workshop. So the fundamentals of using the Bedrock service, how would you talk to these foundational models or LLMs, large language models? Large language models are more language based, text based models. Foundational models is the overall number of bigger models, and LLMs come within that, right? So we can talk to these foundational models or LLMs via an API. Okay, it's as simple as that. And there are
Parna,
large number. Yes,
sorry, you need to zoom in a bit, please.
zoom a little bit. Okay,
Yes. Make this 125. Yeah, they should be fine. Thank you so much. Sorry to
fine,
disturb.
no worries. Right. So I'm not going to be reading through this. I will leave that for you to go through it. I will be quickly going through the workshop and telling you what exactly we'll be doing. So as I was saying, it is API driven. So you can talk to these large language models and foundational models via the API. So on the console, before you can actually go in and use Bedrock and these foundational models or LMs, you need to enable them. All right. So I will not be going through every step. A few of the things that you need to do. So you'll see over here, there are a couple of steps mentioned in the self-paced one. So when you're going to be doing it in your own account, you will be looking at the self-paced setup. All right. So in the self-paced setup, they've given very briefly. So I will give you a more comprehensive walkthrough of what you need to do. So it's a combination that you'll have to do, which is not mentioned in the self-paced. So you can go and have a look over here. Okay. So at the AWS event setup, you'll see that you'll need to actually go and enable the models. So there is a portion over here called model access, which I'll show you in my account as well. Okay. So if we go to Bedrock, so that particular instruction doesn't show up in the self state setup, hence I'm showing this to you. So you'll need to go over here, model access. I've already provided access to several of my models, but for example, I have given already access, so you can see access granted, but you will actually need to give access if you're doing it for the first time. So for example, if I want to modify model access, I want to include some more, disable some and add some, then I would go here and I will have to go and click on the check boxes. Okay. Which models you need, that is mentioned over here. So remember, it is not mentioned in the self-paced one. You will have to look over here to see which models are being used. So scroll down, it is giving you the list of models that we will be using in the workshop. Accordingly, just go and click on the check boxes. Okay, so over here, I have already done it, so you can see it as access granted. But if you have to do it, for example, you would have to click on it, and at the end, you'll have to go and do next and submit it. Okay, thereafter, you'll see that the access has been granted. So I've already given myself access to the same set. All right. Next thing that you need to do is, after you've submitted it, you will have to ideally create a domain in SageMaker AI. Okay, now some of you who've already used SageMaker previously, you would have seen that if you go to SageMaker, if you type over here, so SageMaker Studio has now been renamed as SageMaker AI, so don't get confused. So you'll see over here that there are options of actually opening up notebooks from here as well. But I suggest don't do that. You should actually go and create something called as a SageMaker domain. So a SageMaker domain, if you see over here, I have created already a domain, but you will need to create one. So SageMaker domain is nothing but a central organization where you can manage all your ML resources, your users, your projects, and the configurations at one central place. So there can be collaboration between all your data scientists, your machine learning engineers, your software developers, and they will have their own workspaces. And there could be sharing of resources, sharing of notebooks. So all that encapsulated together is known as a domain. Okay, so you will need to create a domain. If you see over here, it doesn't very clearly mention about the domain part, hence I'm showing that to you. So you will actually have to create a domain. So it's mentioned here in the event, but in an event you already get a domain, but you will have to create this for yourself. So I'll show you how to do that. I have already created mine over here. You will have to go and say create domain. This takes some time, hence I've pre-created it. As you all are doing it just for yourself for practice purposes, then set it up for a single user account. Okay, do not choose setup for organizations. This is for multi-account, a lot of more enhanced features when you want to control a lot of access and enhanced features, I would say. Don't choose this one, choose the single user one. This domain can be created from the console, like I showed you, but just for your information, these can be created through CloudFormation and CLI also. Okay, this is just FYI. We are going to do it through the console. So once you create it, just choose the default options. And once that is done, this is what it will look like. Now, when you will be going through the steps for domain creation, I've pre-created because it takes some time. So in the interest of time, you'll see that there'll be steps where it will ask you which VPC do you want. Okay, so it is up to you. You can allow it to create it in the default VPC, or you can provide your own VPC and subnets of your choice. Okay, so it's up to you. If you go through the steps with the default settings, it will create it in your default VPC. So just a little overview. So once your domain is created, you can have multiple users who are going to be using these workspaces that I'm talking about. I'll tell you what these workspaces are. Probably you are not able to imagine right now. So once you create your domain, you'll see under user profile, there is going to be one default user already created for you. So you don't really need to create another user for doing the workshop. This will be created, but just for your knowledge purposes, I have just created one test user. You can also create one. Why we need this user? Because this user is actually going to be going and launching the SageMaker Studio, where you're going to be doing the workshop, creating your notebooks, etc. Okay, so when you create a user, when you add a user over here, why do we need users? So remember that there are multiple parties working on a ML project. Like I said, there could be a data scientist, there could be a ML engineer. Everybody will have different sorts of permissions, right? And they'll have their own applications they are working on, their own workspaces. That's why you can have multiple users or user profiles. Now, how do you control what those users can do? By default, you will see that when you create a role, what we call as a SageMaker execution role. Okay, this has all permissions to interact with all the features of SageMaker. In the real world, you will not give all the features, so you can create your own role, and in that you can restrict access. But when you just do a default creation, you will see, if you go and see the default user which was there, this is the user that I created. So this is the default user, right? So if you see, the default user has a role which was already created. Yeah. So if you see this, there was a role which was automatically created, and this role, if you open it up in IAM, you will see that it's got all the permissions. It's got the full set of permissions to talk to all SageMaker features and services. Okay. Now coming back, after you've created it, how do you start the workshop? So now you've got your user profile. So now you need to enter into the studio to start doing the workshop. So over here on the right, you can see there's a launch button. When you click on launch, you're going to select studio. Okay, so this is going to open up the SageMaker Studio for you. Okay, so this is your SageMaker Studio. It can be a little overwhelming at first, but I'm just going to focus on the parts related to our workshop. There's a lot you can learn on SageMaker, and you can go through these tutorials over here. One thing I would suggest is when you're going to do the workshop, go to Get Started and at least watch this video. Okay, never mind going through everything else, but at least watch this video. It will give you a quick walkthrough of what this studio is, so you'll feel more familiar to go through it. Okay. Otherwise, now if we just focus on our workshop, you'll see that for that user profile, I have given settings such as I want them to see only these applications. Actually, if you see, there are a whole lot of other applications also. But somebody who's seen SageMaker before must be wondering why I don't see the others, because I have restricted that user to only these. So I see only certain applications. I can even restrict to what features I see. Okay, so that's the purpose of that user profile. For your workshop purposes, you can have all the things available, though you're not going to be using. Now, coming to how do you actually open up that notebook and start doing your workshop? So you're going to be clicking on Jupyter Lab. Okay, so once you click on Jupyter Lab, you need a workspace now where you are going to be actually coding and writing a Python code to talk to those Bedrock APIs. So over here, you see that I already have 2 workspaces. But when you go there, you will not have any workspaces. Obviously, this is the first time you're going to create what is known as a space. Okay, so a space can be a private space where only you are coding and you are creating your notebook, or it could be a shared one. Okay, so you're going to be clicking over here and saying create a Jupyter Lab space. Okay, so I have chosen private. Obviously, in a real world organization, you would mostly be having a shared workspace where engineers are interacting, sharing resources, they are sharing notebook, they are sharing data with each other. Okay, so but for this workshop, you can choose private and then create a workspace. Now, what does this workspace do? When you go to create it, it will even ask you which instance type it should run on. Ultimately, your notebook is running on some instance, right? It is an EC2 instance at the end of the day. And you can see these options over here. So over here, if you see in the self-paced, they have mentioned to you, though they skipped a lot of other things. So hence I took you through that. They've said that make sure that you choose the instance type as MLT3 medium and the AMI. Okay, so the AMI is the template, right? All the frameworks, all the software that is going to be installed on that EC2 instance on which you're going to be running your notebook. So they've mentioned it over here, and you can see the same ones have been selected. I have selected the same ones. They are selected by default. You can keep it the same. Okay. Only for more complex tasks, you'll need a larger instance type. Once you have that, currently I have them in running state, okay, these instances, but when you create it, it will possibly be in stopped state. Okay, the instances in stop state, you'll have to start it. Okay, so you'll have a start button, you're going to click on start. Now, currently they are in running state, so you'll notice over here on the left hand side, if I click on running instances, you'll see that they are actual instances which are running. Can you see they are running? And I have 2 workspaces created. So these 2 workspaces are nothing but 2 applications that I want to work on. So just for demo purposes, I've created 2, but you will just need 1. So just create 1. Once it goes into running state, you'll need to actually open up the notebook. Okay. So I had already created this. Okay. Let me see. Sure why it was not clicking. Okay, now it's clicking. Okay, so I'm going to say open Jupyter Lab. So this is going to open up a new browser. Okay, so while that is opening up, let me come back here. Okay, so now in order to go through the workshop, you don't have to code from scratch. There is a great repository which has been given to you all you need to do is you need to clone that repo. Okay, so I'll just paste this link in, I'm not sure whether it will go through, else I'll ask the Besa team to send it to you. So this has actually all the code in it. You're just going to be cloning this. Okay, so we will need to clone it. This part over here is just talking about your permissions. So obviously when you are using your account, make sure that you have permissions to use Bedrock. So this is all that it's saying. If you don't have permissions to use Bedrock, you won't be able to do this workshop. That's all it's saying. Next, we come to this part. So once your lab is opened, okay, so over here you can see that I have already cloned it. Let me take you to the other workspace where I haven't cloned it so I can show you. Yeah, so I'll open this up also. Here I've not already cloned it, and I'll show you how to clone that. Okay, so once you come in here, you are going to be creating a workspace. Okay, so you need a kernel or you need a runtime environment where your code is going to run, right? So you will be choosing Python 3. You will see that they've mentioned about it. It's not very clearly mentioned here, but in the later steps, it's there. Okay, so once you come here, okay, you can clone the repository based on the repository they've given. So back here, this is the link. Now you can clone this repository from the terminal also. You must have seen there were options for that too, but I'll just do it through the UI. Okay, so I'm going to put the link. And you can see it's pulling it down from the repo. And you have the same, all the files that I shared in the GitHub link, it's all downloaded over here. All right. So now once you have this, now if you go back to the workshop, they've started talking about doing the setup for the code. Now we are going to be writing our code in Python and we are going to be using Boto 3, the SDK for Python of Amazon. So we need to install those, obviously those libraries. So that's why they've asked you to go ahead and install this, but you don't need to separately do it. If you see the first part, the first step over here, which is the Bedrock basics prerequisites, which is over here. This one already has that step. So you don't really need to separately do that. So you can directly go to basics. Okay. And there will be a lot of markup where they are explaining about what exactly you're doing. So what you're seeing right now in front of you is a notebook. Okay. So in a notebook, Python is an interpreted language. So line by line, you can run the code. So there'll be some markup cells where there is just explanation and text in it. That is not really code. And there will be cells. These are known as cells. Okay. These are cells where there is actual code in it. Now, before we start running the code, I just want to tell you is ensure that your kernel is Python 3. Okay. At times it happens that it loads up, but something else is chosen or the kernel is not chosen. So ensure that you choose Python 3 because this is the runtime kernel that you need to run this workshop. So ensure that is chosen. Once that is done, you can go through each of the explanations, and they've talked about all the models that we are going to be using in this workshop. So this is a very extensive workshop. We may not have so much time to go through all of them, but the basics I'll show you. So the first part is obviously we are talking with Python. So we need to download those libraries. So those Boto 3 libraries, we'll be using Boto core libraries. So this is the part where we are going to be doing that installation, which they are talking about over here. So you don't separately need to do it. It is already part of the notebook. So you can directly go to the notebook and start looking at that. Okay. So you can go here like they've mentioned and go to the next step. All right. So over here, how do you run a cell? So you can obviously go and click over here. This is the play button. So you can click it or you can do a shift enter. Okay, so once it starts running, this is the code which is installing those libraries. You'll see there's an asterisk over here. So the asterisk indicates that it is still running. Until and unless you see a number over here, remember it is still running. Now you can see it's turned to 1. That means it's completed running, and you can see the output over here. Next, what we are doing is we need to talk to the foundational models via the Bedrock API. So how do you talk to the Bedrock API? We create something called as a service client. So in this case, the service client is going to be the Bedrock service client. Okay, so we are going to be importing all our libraries, what we need, plus we are creating the Bedrock client. I hope you all are able to see this, or hopefully this is better. Yeah, so we are going to import this. So again, I'm going to be running this cell. Okay, so there is no output as such, but it's completed. Next, we need to inform the API which model I wish to use. Okay, so before you start using a model, remember we had gone and enabled those models over there, right? I think I closed that window. So we had gone ahead and enabled those models. Just for you to verify, you can run the step. This will actually show you all the models. It's the model summary, all the models which you have given access to. So it's listing all of them. Okay. Once you've done that, the most important API call that you do to the Bedrock API is the invoke model API call. So there are two types. There is an invoke model and there is an invoke model for streaming as well. Okay, they are of two types. So in invoke model is when you want an instantaneous response and the response body is very small. However, if you are generating a lot of content and you don't want the user to wait, so you want to stream it bit by bit, right? Incrementally, that time we are going to use the invoke model for streaming. Okay, so there are two types of calls. So this part you can just read through it. They are just giving you examples. For example, this is for the Nova model. We don't use this in the workshop, but you can go through it. Every model, remember, has a different structure for input. Okay, so it's not the same for every model. So you need to know exactly the structure. It will depend from model to model. So you'll have to refer to the documentation before you use a certain model, right? So you can just go through this. Once you do that and say you made up your mind which model you need to use, remember there is an important step where you need to specify the inference parameters as well. So if you've used the Bedrock console API ever, so this is the console. So you can actually play around with Bedrock even from the console. If you watch the previous videos, there we have done it through the playground. So if I come over here, and you'll see in the workshop, there are steps where they've asked you to do certain things like try out zero shot prompt engineering. So zero shot, if you remember, it is, you're just giving the instructions. You're not giving any context around it. You're not giving any examples, right? It's like a shot in the dark and you're expecting what will the model answer to you. That's called zero shot. So you can try out these in the workshop. They've given you examples. So I'll just show you a few of them. So the same thing what I'm doing programmatically, you can do it through the playground as well. So this part over here, I'll go to the playground. So because I'm going to do through text, there are different modalities which you can use. I'm going to choose anthropic. So just similar to what they're showing in the workshop. And I think they mentioned sonnet. So I'm going to use that. And over here, just like you were seeing in the workshop, you have to provide information about the inference parameters. So these are called inference parameters, meaning the response that the model gives, you can tweak that as well. Okay, this is very different from your model parameters. So don't get confused. Inference parameters is when it's giving the response, it's giving the answer. How creative do you want it to be? So that is controlled by temperature. So temperature, if you make it the least, that means it is more deterministic, meaning it will give you a very fixed answer. It will not be very creative. But if you're doing content generation, you would want it to be more creative. You will increase the temperature as much as possible. So 1 is the maximum. Top P, that is the top most probable outcomes. So you want it to take the most probable outcomes in percentage wise. So 99, the 0.99 is almost like 99% of the top probable ones. Okay, so if you reduce it, you're saying just take 18% of the top probable outcomes. This is in percentage and this is in number. Okay, they are one and the same thing, but you express in percentage. This is the top k, meaning, so if I say this 250, take the top 250 outcomes in your response. So that's what we were doing even over there. You can tweak the inference parameters, and there we are going to do it programmatically actually. So if you see here, so let's try out. I think I've run the previous, yeah, I think I've already done it. I'll show you even on the UI. Over here, we've imported Boto. We have created the Bedrock client, service client. Then here we are using Nova, but I have not enabled Nova, so I'm not going to be doing this. I'll probably go to the next one. I have enabled stable diffusion. Okay, so I'll try this. So you see over here in this code, you don't need to understand this code right now. You can do it at your own time. Okay, so don't worry too much. I'm just pointing you out to some important things. Okay, so this is the part where you're putting in your prompt. Okay, so the prompt is stable diffusion, by the way, is a ML foundational model which generates images, okay, from text to image. So we are saying a landscape with trees, that is our prompt. Okay, there are certain parameters you can pass to it, so which are mentioned over here. You can see the documentation of stable diffusion, and accordingly tweak that. Okay, this is the part where we have to actually mention the model's name. So you can see the model's name is there and the version. Accept means the client which is accepting the response, it will accept a JSON response. When it's sending the prompt, it is, the model is going to also accept it in JSON. This is what it means. So all this information we have to wrap it up and then call the invoke model. So if you recollect, I told you there is an API call that we make called invoke model. So all this information, which model to use, what are the parameters, etc., we pass to it, and then it's going to generate a response. Okay, so over here I'm just going to run it. I think because this is for stable diffusion, you do not see those top P, top K and temperature. In the previous one, which was for Nova, I'll show it to you, though I'm not running it because I've not enabled it. It will not run. You'll see, even if I run it, it will tell me you don't have access. So this is how you mention it here. It is same like I'm doing it on the UI. Okay, so let me run this one. So it is still running. You can see the asterisk. All right. So obviously you cannot see the image because it's base 64 encoded. We need another library to actually decode it. So we are going to use decoder library. We are going to use the pillow library to decode it and then get the image. So you can see over here, we've gone and imported it and then we are decoding it. So once I run this cell, you're going to see that it's going to decode it. Did it run? Okay, it's running now. Okay, so it's, you can see the output over here. It is actually installing. All right, so that took a while, right? So that's what I meant when I said that there are certain API calls for streaming API. So if you recollect, the prompt was what? A landscape with trees. So this is what it generated. So similarly, if we are going to generate a lot of content, we would not be using invoke model. We'll be using invoke streaming. Okay, there's another API call for that. So let's try that out. So there is this call invoke model response stream that we'll be calling. And in this case, we are actually creating a blog. So blog is a large amount of text content that we are going to be generating. We cannot make the user wait for us to, slowly generate it, right? So that's where we are going to chunk by chunk pass it. So you'll see it how that will work. Now over here in the next step, you can see we have a prompt over here similar to what you saw earlier. We are going to mention the model ID. This time we are going to use Amazon's Titan text, okay, because we are generating a blog. So every model has their own specialty. Depending upon their specialty, you're going to choose that model and based on your use case. Similarly, what the client is going to accept, what content type the model is going to accept, you mentioned here. You'll do some error handling, and this is where you're going to be invoking with response streaming. Okay, so see over here, this is different from previously, it was just invoke model. This is with response streaming. Similarly, you have the prompt, the model ID, everything passed, and I'm just going to run that. And you can see over here, this part of the code, even if you don't understand too much of code, what it's doing is chunk by chunk, as the stream is going to come, it's going to bit by bit go and give the output to the user. You're going to be seeing this also. When I run this, you'll see. So it's still running. Okay, so it started generating a blog. Okay, now you can see it's coming chunk by chunk, because we've used the streaming API, and it's created a blog about, I think the topic was something to do with write me a blog about making strong business decisions. So in terms of workshop, all you need to do is frankly run cell by cell. Just understand the explanation and go cell by cell. After that, you can see that these are different examples. So I will not go through every example, and I can see that Ashish is already here. So you just need to go through every model that they've explained over here and run each cell. I think we'll probably have to do it in the next session, Ashish. I know time is up.
Yeah,
But I think yeah, at least they've got the basics.
It's
how
a
to
lengthy
run the
workshop. It's not expected that in this 70 minutes or 60 minutes we would be able to cover everything. I want to address some questions which were there. So thanks, Purna, for demonstration.
Yeah.
First was workshop link. So we would be sharing the link in the emails. We would be putting it into the YouTube channels, and also will be putting it into the LinkedIn group. So you could follow it along. Yes, there could be some cost associated with it, but it should not be beyond few dollars. That's my take. But if you run it for 100 hours, obviously the cost is going to be increased. So don't quote me on that,
Right.
but it should be very minimal cost which you should be paying. Second, what we were trying to do here, we were trying to invoke these models programmatically. See, every time you could go into console, and from there you could invoke a model very easy, but it is not a real world scenario. Real world scenario is you would have your program who would be talking to the model, sending input, getting the output, and then performing some tasks. So that's what we were trying to emulate here. Probably if you did not have background on what is Bedrock and how it works, what is a Bedrock playground, you may be confused a bit. So we suggest you check the previous videos of what Bedrock is and how it works into the playground, and then you can start working on that. And the Bedrock is big, right? And there are a lot of component on the workshop also. So we were trying to invoke these things programmatically by creating a workspace and then invoking things, and afterward we would be able to keep moving forward to the next step. And obviously this video is recorded, so you could follow along later. Shouldn't be a problem at all. And if you get the complete workshop done, let us know, and we would be happy to have any feedback. Yes, there was little confusion about people that what we are trying to do. We were trying to invoke these models programmatically through the API call. That's what we have done so far. So thanks, Purna. And we would be sharing more workshop, but we would try to give you some background also into the next session. So shouldn't be a problem at all. Thank you, Purna, for that.
Okay, just one thing, because I created those spaces, and you spoke about, make sure to clean up. Those spaces are actually EC2 instances, which I told you that they are started. Make sure that if you are stopping halfway your workshop, click on the stop in the space. Okay, that will stop your EC2 instance. Otherwise, they'll keep on running if you plan to complete
we
it
don't want to unnecessarily pay money. If you are learning something and paying money, good, but just not by mistake. So be aware about that. Thank you so much. And now we move to the next track, which is behavioral track. And I let Prasad lead it. We could see people are waiting for it. So thanks for that, Purna. And over to you, Prasad.
Thanks, Parna. It was really interesting session, and thank you everyone for asking so many questions. We were not able to catch up to answer all the questions, but we do have a Discord channel, so keep post your questions on Discord channel, and the community will be able to help you with all the questions. Right. With that, let me introduce today our guest speakers. So I'm adding Jeff and Paul to the screen. So let's start with introductions. Jeff, go for it.
Hello, Prasad and Paul. Great to see you both. I am Jeff Barr. I'm VP and Chief Evangelist for AWS. I'm coming up on 23 years with Amazon. For 20 years, I wrote the AWS news blog and wrapped that up last December. And right now I'm focusing on my new interesting topic is future of software development or next generation development, kind of the two words for the same thing.
Great. Paul.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, depending on what time it is. Nice to see you again, Jeff. Nice to see you, Prasad. I'm Paul Duffy. I joined AWS originally in 2011. I've left twice and come back twice with adventures at startups in between. And I've generally done roles either being a solution architect, leading solution architect teams, or most recently, the thing I'm doing is leading a technical product marketing team that's trying to help simplify the AWS portfolio for customers. And Jeff and I have known each other a little while at this point.
A very, very long time, actually. So many years ago, I think we're talking 12 years ago now, I used to do a video interview series as part of my job. And Paul was one of my guests. And we did this really fun video of basically what does it take to become a solutions architect. I think I was very young in my interviewing career and skills at that point, that we were learning as we went. But 12 years on, it was really fun to do. It was great to actually get to know Paul and to hear a bit about his career back then. So Paul, I do kind of think the role has changed a bit over the last 12 years, and because you've had multiple discrete samples, perhaps you're in a great position to kind of give our audience a sense of how did things actually change.
Yeah. And it's like 12 years. We haven't changed a bit, Jeff. We do look just the same. I was earlier in my interviewee career, so let's see if we do a better job. And it's funny, I had a look at that video just before the call to refresh what we talked about and to think about what's changed and what's stayed the same. So I think in many ways the role hasn't changed, Jeff, in that I think it's still about trying to help customers who've got problems to solve in their business, and how they can use various different building blocks in the cloud to do that, and being kind of kind, caring, and good communicating humans who can deal with both the technology stuff, which can be really difficult, and also the human stuff, which can be difficult and easy at the same time. So I think there's a bunch of stuff that hasn't changed. And when I look at SAs who I've worked with from years ago and who I work with now, there's some fundamental things that are the same. On the differences side, though, I think, I've always thought that being a solutions architect is one of the best roles that you can possibly have, and even more so when you're working with AWS cloud technologies. And I think a lot of the differences are just, one, the number of things that we've got that customers can do. And you remember, I was trying to think back to I think that interview we did was just before the first reInvent. And that reInvent was when it was the first time we'd done a big event. It was the first time we'd launched a big product at our conference, and we announced Redshift. And at that time, there weren't a lot of AWS services that were out there. And it was relatively easy to be good enough. My team at the time, it was easy enough to kind of have a good core understanding of the basic building blocks. And then you could use them to build whatever solution that you could possibly imagine. And now customers just have more and more choice of different technologies that can help them get to what they're doing more quickly. And then from our perspective at AWS, it's always let us do more of that undifferentiated heavy lifting work so that you can focus on the higher level stuff. So I think from just doing that role, you're doing the same kind of fundamentals. You have more and more stuff that's in the toolbox so that you can help customers. And then obviously the elephant in the room with every conversation that you have these days, and I've managed to keep a few minutes without saying the term, but the generative AI stuff that you see. And I think the other thing there, Jeff, is just the pace of change has accelerated. I grew up in working in a computer shop in my hometown, building computers, and you would excitedly be waiting for the next version of some software to kind of literally arrive in the mail. And when I first got to AWS, I'd just come from working on package software, and I was thinking, wow, we're shipping stuff to customers every week. This is amazing, kind of thing. But you were still dealing with infrastructure and kind of servers, and I was still SSHing into a kind of Linux server to do that kind of stuff, or connecting to like a MySQL database or whatever. And as I've watched, particularly over the last couple of years, I thought the rate of change was kind of generally fast, but I think with the generative AI change, it's just been so exponential, and it's been such a thing for customers and for architects to learn. So anyway, getting long-winded, but I think big changes are just the amount of stuff that we've got that we can help customers build stuff with. And then I've always thought in our field, you've got to be curious. I mean, you've had an even broader set of it with your time at AWS than me. I've always thought, you have to learn and be curious, and everything's changing. And over the last couple of years, that's just that pace has just increased. So I think if you're a learn and be curious person, you need to be learning more and being more curious. So those are the big changes for me.
I love what you said at the start of your answer about being a kind and caring human. That gets you so far in life, and it's one of those things that you don't always realize you have that in you until you're grown up and you realize you actually are one, and you say, wow, my parents actually did something right, and they helped me to be and grow into that person. And when you're kind and caring, especially in these technical fields where sometimes we can get a little bit obsessed with the ones and the zeros and the black and the white and think everything is just it either is or it isn't. And especially you point out with that so many services, we're all on these learning journeys, and we're all doing our best to actually learn and to progress, and to have that bit of compassion for people that are trying to navigate their way through this absolute flood of innovation, and say, okay, well, the thing that I thought was innovative last week is last week's news. Now there's a new innovative thing, and if someone didn't actually manage to catch up on the news every last minute of every day, well, be a little bit understanding and say, wow, we're both just surfing this wave of change, and guess what? You blinked and you missed something really interesting. I think that's such an important skill in a fast-paced career, and there's never any shame for someone to be a little bit behind and doing their best to catch up.
Yeah, I could not agree more.
Excellent. So let's kind of talk about what is at AWS we have. I don't even know how many solution architects we have, other than a lot. But what do you actually do on a day-to-day basis? How would you what's kind of how do you find the customer, and how do you get engaged, and what are the set of activities that keep you intellectually challenged and being kind and caring to your customers over the course of a day or a week?
Well, some of it, I think, depends on which kind of customers you work with. But I mean, at the end of the day, this role is all about working with customers. And so typically, solutions architects will be working with other members on an account team to help a certain set of customers. And on that, a lot of it is just, we use the phrase at Amazon a lot, but working backwards from what does the customer want to achieve this year, and how can you help them? And then you're going back to the sort of the learn and be curious. What would you do to help them? And that could be anything from helping a customer understand a new service or a new topic that they just haven't studied before. And we're sort of being that, Andy Jassy's famously said, there's no compression algorithm for experience. And I think in some ways, solution architects can be that compression algorithm for customers. So some of it might be literally going and explaining to a customer they haven't used Bedrock, for example, or they're new to, they're an enterprise customer who's thinking about how they can incorporate generative AI into the applications that they're building. So it could be anything from explaining the kind of the basic stuff to them. It could be running some kind of workshop. It could be, the most fun thing, which is whiteboards in the room. You're in the room with the customer. You kind of jamming on the whiteboard for drawing out the architecture that you think is going to make sense. You could be helping them run a proof of concept. You could be speaking at an event about some of the work that you've done with customers. You could be at an event or a trade show. You could be doing some content building. I mean, one of the things that's, I think, always been really fun for a lot of solution architects, many who are way, way better at this than I am, is they're doing all these things with these absolute cutting edge customers. And then how can they share that interesting thought leadership with other folks? Because some of it, some of the work, okay, you're going to a customer, you're explaining some fairly basic stuff for the customer. Well, it may not be basic for the customer, it may be basic for you, but the customer's new to it. But then when you look at the breadth of different customers that people deal with, my most recent experience with solution architecture has been leading a team that works with startups. And when you're hearing about startups like Perplexity or Hippocratic AI or Brainbox AI, these folks are doing really, really cutting edge stuff. And so at that point, you are in the room with that customer, helping them do the kind of the distributed training and setting up, whether it's SageMaker Hyperpod, whether it's using Bedrock, but doing all those things. So the sort of the TLDR on it is every day in a fun way is different. But the two things that are common with everything that I just talked about is it's all about working with customers on one side and really cool technology on the other side, which is why I think the role is such a cool and fun one.
Interesting. So it actually sounds like because you are working with customers and the customers are by definition trying to do something brand new, you get to help them get to and then stay on the leading edge of whatever their path, their technology and their product path is, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I just want to say one more thing. You talked about the kindness thing. This is the other thing where, especially when people, and I've seen it multiple times in my career now because I'm older than we were when we first started working and first did our last interview like this, that I've always worked on things that are sort of enjoyably disruptive. So the first time I saw this was kind of core client server stuff, moving from mainframes and AS400s, which, hopefully many in this audience will never work with a mainframe or an AS400. Then to like voice over IP and convergence of like desktop comm software versus PBXs and IP PBXs, and then now working with cloud technologies. And, and particularly with generative AI. And sometimes these things can just be angst-inducing for people because it's a big change to what they've been doing. If you're a PBX person, it's like, what's happening with this IP stuff? Is it going to take my job away? Is it going to change what I need to know? And again, if you've been in a kind of a server in an on-premises environment, how's it going to change stuff? So yeah, you're helping customers deal with all these changes that are happening in their environment. You've got to do it in a way that helps them absorb that change. And that's why I think, I would just emphasize again the kindness thing, and the human part of it is so important.
It is, and that angst and induction, I guess. There is a real challenge because people have spent a lifetime building up a set of skills, and you come in with something brand new, and you are empowering them, but at the same time they say, how are my old skills still relevant in this new world? And being compassionate and understand that and say, okay, let me help you to be in the best possible situation to help drive your organization forward is essential.
Yeah.
So kind of I know we're part of the kind of behavioral track of our lesson today. What are when we say kind and compassionate, what kind of like interpersonal skills do you think are the really super helpful ones to succeed as a solutions architect?
Well, some of this is going to sound like so obvious that I always hate talking about this because it's like, am I being patronizing? But experience has taught me that no, actually, sometimes we can forget these things. And I think technical people, and you said it before with the ones and noughts, technical people really like to know the answer. And I can actually tell you from my earliest days I was doing technical support at Microsoft, and there was nothing more satisfying in a way than doing kernel debugging and getting down to the source code and being like, aha, like I have found the answer. Like I have found this bug in the Windows kernel and I know exactly why this thing has happened. And this is the satisfaction of getting it right. I think one of the biggest things that is important is just this. We've talked a little bit about the compassion and so on, but it's listening. It's making sure that you are really using your listening skills to understand what the customer needs. It's a kind of a teach thing versus a tell thing often in these kind of roles, because you're dealing typically with customers who are the experts at what they're doing. You're not the expert in the kind of the retail company, or you're not the expert in the work that Perplexity is doing, or if you're working with a Stripe, you're not the financial services expert, but hopefully you are the cloud expert and you can help them. And I think a lot of that it's doing the listening stuff. It's doing the right kind of sort of challenging to the customers, because they may not know the sort of the cloud or architectural stuff, because especially in the startup world, if you're a startup solutions architect, you are doing this every single day with lots of different customers. But if you're the customer, you are one customer. You are just doing this with your architecture. So if you're the solution architect, you can bring to bear a lot of that stuff to sort of gently and sort of, this is where it's just, it is the sort of behavioral, it's not a binary ones or zeros thing, but how do you sort of gently prod the customer in the right direction? And then I'll give you another example that I think can be one of the hardest things for solution architects, but I think it's a very good example for this behavioral thing, which is when I first got to AWS, I heard Adam Selipsky, former CEO, who used to kind of be our boss back in those days, Jeff. One of the things he said is, I want our customers to spend the smallest amount of money possible with us. And that really stuck with me. And I kind of loved it, because you go to customers and it's like, how can I reduce your bill? Like, how can I help you spend less money on the cloud stuff that you're using? And a lot of customers were kind of like, wow, never heard, like, we're not used to that kind of thing.
It's a surprise.
So step one is like, okay, you can do all that kind of stuff, and you go through the whiteboard exercise, you look at all the stuff in the architecture, and you kind of turn in the screws on all of that stuff. Or in the modern world, maybe we can use some serverless stuff like Lambda functions to reduce the number of servers, but whatever. You sort of do the basic cost optimization stuff, and it's very easy at that point to be like, job done, I'm moving on. The much harder thing is like, okay, customer, I've helped you now do this kind of thing. You still have a bunch of business problems. And of course, you would prefer to spend less money than more money. And we would always want to help you do that. But you still got a stack of business problems. We've still got a stack of technology stuff. And you've just saved a bunch of money. How can we now help you with that sort of blank sheet of paper, new stuff that you hadn't had on your list because you've been having all this other architecture? So I think sometimes doing that stuff comes less naturally because it's kind of more ambiguous, and you've still got to push people more. But that can be the hallmark of some of the best solution architects ever, because they do the sort of trust earning, reduce the amount people are spending stuff. And then it's like, wow, you've now just taken this customer to a place they didn't even think they could get to, with some new technology helping solve their business problem, and doing the right thing to delight their customers. And so anyway, I mixed a few things in.
Sure, no, that's super helpful. So I know that we have several levels of solutions architect at AWS. We have the associate, the senior, and the principal. Do you have a good way to explain kind of the expectations of like the responsibilities at those levels, or how do we tell them apart, or how do you qualify for one versus the next?
Well, and I'd love you to push back if you disagree, but here is my take on that. So yeah, we have everything from associate solution architects, and there's one of my favorite programs at AWS is one called 𝐻𝐻𝑈. And 𝐻𝐻𝑈 is something that takes folks who are often coming right at the start of their career. Maybe they've come out of college. I did not go to college, so maybe they haven't gone to college, but they end up in this program that starts them off. And the associate solution architect, often, and this is the one thing I'm really interested to see what you think, Jeff, but often the associate solution architects can sometimes be sort of some of the deepest technical folks, because they've just come from university courses maybe, or they've come from boot camps, or they've just done deep stuff. And they're at their start of their career. They're typically focused on things that are a little bit narrower in scope. So if you're an associate solutions architect, we're probably not going to send you on the first day to talk to the CTO of a 100-year insurance company. That conversation might not be the best one for anybody. But you might well go to that big insurance company to do a workshop and to do some deep cloud workshop on a technology that's relevant for the customer. Or if you've just finished your education, or you're just at the start of your career, unlike the sort of the older folks like me with more gray hair, you may have just been looking at machine learning or AI stuff, because it is the sort of the zeitgeisty stuff that's happening. So you could be the very useful sort of disruptive stuff to go on. And then we have everything all the way up to kind of principal solution architects and senior principal solution architects. And at those levels, oftentimes it's not about becoming more technical per se. It's just that you're starting to work on more and more broader problems where the ambiguity is much higher. And I always used to think about it. My mental model was, so the more senior the solution architects you get, the more it becomes a case of, you're at the start of your career, and I remember this at the start of my career, it's like, go and solve this very specific thing, and you can kind of, like I was saying, you can go into the source code and get down to that bug in the Windows kernel, and the sort of the constraints on what you're doing are quite tight. And at the most senior levels, it's like, I don't really know what the problem is with this customer. Go and find out if you can find what the problem is. And once you've found out what the problem is, see if you can solve it. And if you thought about an enterprise customer, it's like you're going into a room with bunch of different people in different teams who might have different agendas on what they're trying to do, and it's like, go and sort that out. And with that room, going back to what we were talking about, the kind of the behavioral stuff, that is not about going into the room and saying, here is the answer, I have the right answer, it's a kind of a technical answer. It's understanding all of the needs of those people, some of which will be technical, some of which may not be technical, and then how can you advance that forward? Or how can you help that large group of people to change their thinking about architecture? That's pretty hard. And that when I'm thinking about the kind of the principal technologists we have there, not only are they kind of super broad and deep technologists, but they can also go and make that happen in a really, really complex and ambiguous environment.
Interesting. So again, we kind of come back to people skills, right? Like being able to understand the bigger picture, and to you don't come in with just your book and say, okay, here's the way we do it, but to be able to get into that situation and say, let me listen, let me learn, let me understand the constraints that you and your organization and your business are operating within. Challenge some of those if they are seemingly fixed but actually variable, but others say, well, this is part of the world that you live in, and I will propose solutions respectfully that fit within whatever those constraints might happen to be.
Yeah, and I mean, I will use the word like armadillo here as an example, which, well, bear with me, I'm going somewhere, but it's like, armadillos, they have this kind of hard shell, but yet they're soft within. And I think this is probably the single biggest thing that I've learned over the years of hiring and working with many different solution architects, which is, and I use the word relatively very deliberately here, in that it is relatively easy to find super deep technical people and software engineers. Obviously, we know it's really difficult to find technical people generally, but relatively easy to find those people. It's relatively easy to find people with generically good communication skills. The thing that is really difficult that I have found is it's this intersection where you've got the people who've got both kind of thing. And also, the nice thing about the world is lots of different people. I would be the worst developer in the world. I'm not going to put any developers at a risk of losing their job. And I just don't think I would enjoy that role. But I've always loved the solution architect role because I get to do technical stuff with people. I get lots of variety. That's the other big thing for me. And I get to communicate and help see these things happen with humans. And those are all things I love a lot.
Interesting. So we have a really interesting related question to that. We have a question from our audience. How can a developer transition to a solutions architect? It seems like even with the tech skills, prior experience is needed. But the way you described it almost sounds like developers, solution architects. Is there a well-trodden path from one to the other, or is that just kind of different jobs?
Well, they're different jobs, but I think that's a transition that you see often. Like when I look at a lot of the people, I mean, it's funny. In our video years ago, you were saying, where do these people come from the community? And they do. It's not like the solution architect is a career thing that's 100 years old, like a professional violinist or kind of a physician or something like that. So the paths are a little bit less well trodden. But I think if you're a developer, and by the way, this is also how I've done a bunch of different things in my career, and this is my generic mental model for this. But I think if you're a developer, you've probably got the core technical skills at the kernel there. Sometimes you might need to get a little bit more breadth for the sort of the architectural layer stuff that you can do with customers. But if you fundamentally are a technical person and you can learn technical concepts and you have the passion to do the role, and that's the other thing, like don't be a solution architect if you don't like the sound of this role. And it's okay to not want to do, it's okay to not want to do that stuff. But I think if you're a developer, find some solution architect friends, ride along with them, go to customers with them. And that will, see if you actually like the role. The other thing that often ends up being a really useful thing to help people transition is if you're a developer and you're a technical and you're not yet a solution architect, you've probably got some really useful technical stuff that the customers can benefit from. So find yourself a solution architect friend and go to some customer meeting and find what is the unique thing that you can help with in that meeting that will start to let you sort of test drive the role. I've had in the past a bunch of people who were developers who want to do solution architects, and it's like, we'll do an assessment, we'll see, can they give a good presentation? Can they do an architectural session? And every time someone does a transition, there's always a risk. I've loved taking risks on folks like that. But I think if you're a developer, find someone who's doing that thing, be their friend, ride along with them. That is how I have got a bunch of jobs in my career. And You could get a job out of it. You could find out you don't really like the role, but it's going to be an interesting experience.
I really like that idea, and to me, it points out that there's room for a lot of different skill sets and personality types to succeed in this role, and that there isn't just one mold that you need to fit into. Now, kind of related to that, and this is a good question I actually have had personally, but coming from our audience, says, do we need to excel at all 200 plus AWS services to be an SA? Is that even possible?
Well, I don't know. Do you excel at all 200 plus service, Jeff?
Definitely not.
No, I mean, and I think that was interesting in what we were talking about before, in that when we did that first interview, I think you and I could probably have talked at a pretty decent level about most of our services, just because there weren't very many. And now I think it would be difficult for us to name every single service and kind of give a detailed presentation. So I think, depending on the role, I mean, we've got lots of different types of SAs here at AWS, where we have generalists who are kind of broad technologists across the AWS cloud as a whole. We've got people who are specialists. I think if you're a generalist, I try and think of the visual analogy I like here. I think you end up having sort of the core stuff, and also being an architect. I mean, at one level, kind of architecture is architecture. You've got to know how things fit together. So you end up with a core understanding of how the most common services fit together. And then I think you end up being this kind of, it's like dancing on a sort of a spinning ball that you've got to be very agile. It's like, or spinning plates or something, where you're quickly going to go and learn enough about the next thing that you need to talk to the customer about. And then also recognize when we can't know everything, when to call for help. Yeah. So
that's such an important skill all by itself, right? You can't fake it. And when you realize you're about to reach that cliff of your knowledge and you're nothing, you have to throw up your hands and say, I know nothing now, but let me find a specialist, or let me study up on this so I can help you. So it's such an important thing to do.
And on that, actually related, Jeff, I mean, this is and I always used to do this at interviews back in the day, that I do not know everything, far from it. And with any technical field, I mean, I grew up with a whole bunch of professional musicians, people who are now professional musicians, and they kind of actually do know everything for their instrument. Like they're at the level where they can play any piece on a violin because the music's kind of all written by people who've been dead for a long time. That isn't the case for us. And it's almost like you keep hitting refresh in your career, and it's like, I thought I used to know all this stuff, and now everything has changed, kind of thing. So just knowing, like, my value, and almost the more senior you get, the more common that this will be the case, where it's like, I don't know the answer to this question. I know how I'm going to go and get the answer to this question. But that level of comfort that we would do it. If you're doing an interview, you keep asking technical questions, you're going to get to a point pretty quickly where someone is either going to be telling fibs, or they have to say, I don't know. And it's one of the most attractive traits sometimes. And it also helps customers that we're not oracles. And of course there's going to be something, and you've got to be comfortable with that kind of ambiguity where you don't know everything.
Right. And it also actually earns trust with the customer, and they realize that you are just as human as they are, and that you don't know everything you're trying. Okay, let's see. We only have looks like about a minute left. Give us your 1 minute pitch on how Gen AI intersects with solution architecture and how one affects the other.
Well, I think that let's try and do it pithy in a minute. I think I would just say that two different levels. I think one, it will be a sort of a superpower for any solution architect, in that we just talked about how it's difficult to know everything about every platform. So in a way, the generative AI tools that will exist out there will end up being a superpower for any solution architect working on something. In that you almost think about it like someone is extending their arm to point to a whiteboard, and the power of generative AI somehow makes all this stuff appear on the whiteboard and accelerates that work for somebody, so that they can then do the value add of what they are as a human, as a solution architect. So I think gives you wings, gives you superpowers. I truly believe that, and it's a real thing that's going to be a change agent for what a solution architect can do. And then the other side for it, I think, is on the customer side, which is, oh wow, the things that customers are building, and what that will do in turn for their end customers, whether it's companies like Brainbox, who are doing stuff to reduce the carbon footprint of many, many different customers, whether it's Hippocratic AI, who are doing all of this stuff of providing healthcare related stuff with the models that they're building that are specific to healthcare and what that can do to countries that can't afford to deploy humans to do some of that healthcare. And this is something that is a force for good for human health. And what could be more inspiring than that? Or tools that are kind of permeating every day of our lives, like Perplexity. So that's probably longer than a minute, but those are my two angles. And I think it makes this role, which I think is one of the best roles as a technologist you can do, makes it even more exciting, in my opinion.
Sounds awesome. Well, I think Prasad probably wants us to just about wrap things up, but this has been a total blast to kind of revisit our conversation 12 years later, and let's not wait another 12 to do it.
I was just about to say, yes, let's not wait another 12 years. Lovely to talk to you, Jeff.
We would love to have you again, and we can keep hearing you for another hour. And if you look at the questions, not only on the private chat but on the YouTube that we are getting, it's like blowing up. So we will not be able to answer every question today, but don't worry, we have more guest speakers lined up for the 8 weeks. We have sessions on solutions architect role itself, how the whole interview process goes, like how what the role is and what are the different levels and specialities, from which different roles you can transition into solutions architect role, how the transition would look like. We will cover all of those in the coming weeks. But thank you, Jeff and Paul, so much for joining us. I'm very early for you folks, and thank you so much.
This was super fun. Thanks for watching, and thanks for the great questions.
Our pleasure.
Oh, it was a great session. Means I would suggest people to stop once you have time, rewatch it. It's not like just in 30 minutes you would hear all the wisdom. You may have to rewatch it again. So please rewind and rewatch. There's really cool stuff there. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, everyone. So coming back to what we have done so far, we talked about some of the Gen AI stuff. And as a next step, we would say complete the workshop, share the learning in your network. I know for people who have just started learning about Gen AI, the workshop could be overwhelming. So we suggest check previous videos, and that should be good enough information to get started. We started very basic of Gen AI into last batch. We built on top of it. We talked about Bedrock. We talked about different model. So you should have good information there. And obviously, there were some common questions like how I open up an AWS account or how I go ahead and do this. So use Discord and then share each other's learning. So it would not be like we can't answer all 100 questions or 1,000 questions. So we need your help in answering the things you know. Obviously, it's not like you know everything or we know everything. We can still refer to documentation and come back. And if you could help, please spread word about BESA program, that you see this and then what you liked, what you didn't like, or what we could do to improve. So we need to have a feedback so that we could improve upon all these sessions. So this is all summarization. Videos would be available just after we end the session. So you would still be able to go to YouTube and see all the information there. Shouldn't be a problem at all. And thanks again. So hopefully we would be seeing you again. And thank you everyone for joining the session. Prasad, any last words?
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. Let's keep the conversation continued on the Discord channel, and do share your learnings on LinkedIn. It's always good to learn publicly, build publicly. It will help you to build your own personal brand, and do spread the word for BESA. Looking forward for another exciting session next week.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good of the week, and then we will be talking again next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.